Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us again for yet another ASA podcast. My name is Mike Oscar. I serve as Government Relations Director for the American Subcontractors Association, and today we are interviewing the Surety&Fidelity Association of America, looking specifically at a piece of legislation that they have drafted and we've worked in concert on with them, called the Promoting Infrastructure by Protecting Our Subcontractors and Taxpayers Act. And with us, with the Surety&Fidelity Association of America, is Dalton DeFendis, Director of Federal Affairs. Dalton and I have worked hand in glove, not only on this issue, but a lot of issues. We've had a very harmonious relationship and great working relationship with the Surety&Fidelity Association of America. So I'm very honored to have Dalton with us today. And Dalton, why don't you introduce us to the ASA audience and beyond? And thank you for joining us.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. Can't echo your comments enough. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with the Subcontractors Association over the past few years, particularly on this issue we're going to dive into today.
Great. And so here we are. It's late July. Those of you who may not be aware of it, in Washington, this is really a very busy time because historically we always try to wait to get things done right up before the August recess. And Dalton and his team, along with our team, and actually we're members of a larger coalition called the Construction Industry Procurement Coalition, have been working on advancing this legislation, HR 1641. We were successful with Dalton's efforts to get this legislation, again, the Promoting Infrastructure by Protecting Our Subcontractors and Taxpayers Act, into the INVEST Act, which is the transportation infrastructure bill on the House side that they're trying to push forward. It did get included in that, and now we're working on the Senate side. And if you've been paying attention to any of the news channels, inside or outside the Beltway, the goal right now is for the Senate to move forward on an infrastructure package in a bipartisan way. I think we're going to get there. I'm pretty confident about that. But we have to get all that done, hopefully, before the August recess. So right now we're in crunch time. So this podcast coming to you on July 28, 2021, could be more timely because we're in the trenches. And this is an important issue. This legislation, if it's to be included in the final bill, and that's the goal, would ensure that P3 projects using Transportation Infrastructure Financing Innovation Act, TIFIA financing to be exact, have appropriate payment and performance security and are sound federal investments by requiring a surety bond. Sureties protected approximately $3 trillion of public projects from 2009 to 2019 in the United States. In 2017 through 2019 alone, sureties paid over $2.6 billion in connection with contractor defaults and at-risk federal, municipal, and state projects in the United States. So again, the bonding industry within the subcontracting construction industry are work hand in glove, just like Dalton and I do on your behalf in Washington and on the Capitol and beyond. The performance and payment bond gives security not only to the sub, but also to the owner, developer, and the general contractor, knowing that they're going to get paid and they're going to get paid on time, and the people that they're paying ultimately will have the credibility and the wherewithal and the ability to get the job done in a performance measure that is timely and accurate. So with that, Dalton, I'm going to start off with kind of a state of play. Please give us a quick overview of where the bill is, HR 1641, and its importance that you believe in the construction industry.
No, thank you, Mike. Just to level set, I think I want to echo your comments again that there is an incredible amount of political will on both sides of the aisle to do something in the infrastructure arena, and not just something small like we've seen in the past years where they reauthorize the current highway program and kick the can down the road to do something bigger and bolder at a later date. Infrastructure is one of the rare topics in Washington where you have both sides of the aisle, advancing significant investment. We're talking, hundreds of billions of dollars of new money being funneled into infrastructure programs. That being said, there are some differences in, how the parties, envision paying for this infrastructure package. And one of the new project delivery mechanisms that helps take the burden off of the public sector and shift some of that investment responsibility to the private sector are these projects utilizing public-private partnerships, where the private entity takes on some of the design and construction responsibilities and manages the asset for a certain period of time to turn it over to the state at a later date once they recoup their initial investment. This is by all means, whatever gets infrastructure built. However, as this project delivery method gained popularity in the past several years, we noticed some inconsistencies in how the payment and performance security are applied to these projects. So this bill that you mentioned, the Promoting Infrastructure by Protecting Our Subcontractors and Taxpayers Act, it's been introduced the past two Congresses and really clarifies at the federal level that regardless of whoever is ultimately responsible for the design and construction portion of the project, whether it's traditional procurement, where you've got a DOT doing a design bid build, or this new innovative public-private partnership, the security requirements that are crucial to ensure the subcontractors, suppliers, and workers on the project get paid in the event a general contractor goes out of business. This bill makes sure those protections are not eroded.
Excellent, excellent, and that's very, very important. Our Miller Act, and just for our audience, most of our audience should be aware of the Miller Act, but if you could just give us a quick definition of the importance of the Miller Act and why the bonding requirements of that act, are Miller Act bonding requirements clear on public-private partnerships?
So the Miller Act in our world, Mike, is one of the most important longstanding public policies at the federal level that's been adopted in all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. It essentially sets the payment and performance security requirements whenever you have an agency, a public agency, going out and securing contractor services in the procurement arena. Currently at the federal level, it applies to all projects over $150,000. As I mentioned, it's been adopted in all 50 states to a similar degree. But as you mentioned, with public-private partnerships, the Miller Act is not so clear because the Miller Act was written, well over 80 years ago, before these P3 arrangements were common in the United States. The Miller Act is silent on how these bonding laws apply to public-private partnerships. And similarly, in the states, we've run into the same issue. So in the states, right now there are 56 enabling laws that allow public agencies to move forward on these types of arrangements. Of those 56 laws, only 8 are very clear on what level of security needs to be required for the payment and protection of the subcontractors on the job. 35 of those laws reference security requirements, but give significant discretion. So you can end up in a situation where a project moves forward with only a 20% payment bond in place and maybe a 25% performance bond in place. So we strongly believe that these laws need to be tightened up a bit to make sure a project isn't allowed to move forward without adequate security in place to protect both, the subcontractors, suppliers, and workers on the project, but also protecting the federal taxpayer investment on the project.
No, it makes total sense. So getting right to your point here, I guess, what are the risks involved in these P3 projects for subcontractors if they don't contain these bonding requirements?
A baseline question is, what are the risks involved in construction generally? P3 projects are no different than traditional projects when it comes to the long-standing risks associated with the contractor defaulting in the middle of the job. And when we look at some of the current trends going on in the construction sector right now, material costs really rising due to some of the tariff policies and general inflation that have been longstanding over the past several years, labor shortages that are only getting more and more acute. Construction is a risky business. We've done some analysis, and roughly 25% of contractors go out of business over a 3-year period. So we believe P3s, are dealing with a lot of the same risks that we're seeing across the entire, construction sector right now. And unfortunately, this ambiguity in the law has allowed some P3 projects to move forward with lesser security. And when they do run into trouble, subcontractors don't have recourse to recoup their investment into the project. So where in the traditional private sector construction space, subcontractors have the ability to lien the property, in the P3 space, when they're working on a public project, if a payment bond isn't in place, they often have no recourse to recoup their investment in the project because they don't have an instrument to utilize in the event that a contractor is not able to fulfill its payment obligations.
Understood. So we've been talking about P3s. We've been talking about bonding protections for them. So I guess it begs the question, could you provide an example of a P3 project that lacked bonding protections and the financial impact it had on subcontractors? Bottom line is, why should subcontractors support this effort, and why is the Surety of America, Surety&Fidelity Association of America making this such a top priority?
Yeah, the poster child that I think a lot of folks in our industry are very familiar with is the Indiana I-69 project from a few years back. It was one of the most high-profile P3 defaults we've seen in the U.S. Initially, the project cost was quoted at $369 million. After the general contractor Isolux, who was a Spanish contractor, also responsible for the P3 arrangement, defaulted on the project. The state of Indiana and the DOT had to take back on the responsibility of rebidding the project. Only a 20% payment bond was in place, meaning that they had to also make all of the subs and suppliers whole who had been working on the project. At the end of the day, it added over 2 years to the project delivery timeline and over $200 million, which ultimately falls on the taxpayer to make up the difference. So the total final cost of the project ended up being over $550 million. And in the aftermath of that, the Indiana legislature actually went back to clarify their P3 bonding law to ensure payment and performance bonds must be in place for at least 50% of the total project cost. We would prefer, 100%, because a 50% built bridge isn't going to be able to collect tolls, but at the end of the day, a much better result than the past law, which allowed unlimited discretion in this arena. Fortunately, there haven't been a significant amount of high-profile P3 defaults like Indiana, simply because P3s are new in the U.S. So we are in a very unique situation as advocates in Washington to proactively solve a problem before all of a sudden you've got multiple high-profile P3 defaults where it's costing the taxpayers billions of dollars instead of hundreds of millions of dollars in the Indiana case.
Completely understood, and I want to take a moment again to say thank you, Dalton. This legislation, in many respects, is a common sense solution to a complex problem, and you provided that solution by just describing exactly why you're involved, why your association's involved in this, why ASA supports it. We are trying to get ahead of an issue to correct a problem that we see could be devastating to subcontractors and construction as a whole, especially as we move into more and more of these P3 public-private partnerships moving forward. So I want to take the time to say thank you. Thank you for joining us today. This is all part of the ASA way of trying to really break down the esoteric understanding of legislation and making it more practical so that you can see on the ground why our efforts at the federal level and even at the state level in terms of advocacy are trying to benefit you on a daily and regular basis as you continue to endure the challenges within the construction industry. So thank you very much, Dalton, for joining us, and thank you for sharing this very important information, and good luck as we continue to battle this legislation becoming law, hopefully before the August recess, but if not, immediately after, and we can actually get this in place so that the securities that are needed are in place for P3 projects moving forward. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mike.